Have you anything that needs fixing at home? Or would you, like me, really like to do up your house, but you not quite sure how to give instructions in English? Well, maybe this is the lesson for you. We'll be talking about DIY and home improvement in
Aprender Inglés con Reza y Craig.
Hi, I'm Reza.
And I'm Craig. If you're a new listener to this podcast, you're very, very welcome. With over 45 years of teaching experience, Reza and I are going to help you perfect your pronunciation, vocalize your vocabulary, and grow your grammar. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing, mate?
I'm doing really well. How about you?
Yeah, pretty good. Pretty good. Keen to get started to talk about DIY. But before we do that, we have an email question about prepositions from Nasi Saba. Reza, would you like to read it?
Yes, Nasi wrote, "Hi Reza, I hope you're doing well." I am. Thank you very much, Nasi. Hope you are too. I have a question. Is this sentence correct? Thank you because you put a lot of time and energy for the group. Is the use of the preposition of correct there? I know this one is correct. Thank you because you put a lot of time and energy into the group.
Yeah, that's correct.
Is there a difference in meaning? Thank you for your wonderful podcast. Well, Nasi, it's what you said. The second one is correct. But I wouldn't accept for or of. Would you, Craig? They're both wrong.
No, I wouldn't. I would say you do a lot for the group. So it's a question of the collocation with the verb phrase. So you do a lot for the group, but you put into something. So you put a lot of time into the group, or you put a lot of energy into the project. So it's the collocation, the dependent preposition with the verb to put into, and do for.
We hope that answers your question, Nasi Saba. Thanks very much.
Next, we have a voice message from Bahel, who speaks about body language.
Hello, Craig. Hello, Riza. How are you, both of you? Really, I'm so happy to hear from you every week once you do your broadcast. And I'm happy also to listen to your program. I don't know. Is it program? Yes, I think, yeah. Episodes while I'm riding my bicycle. Yes, I enjoy it, really. Thank you so much. I want to ask you something about the body language in English. I mean, I think Greg is an English native speaker. Do you use body language? I mean, how you explain it as we are learning a new language? How we can use our body to act with the language that we are speaking? Yeah, that's it. And I don't know, can I ask Riza a question? Are you Iranian? Why you had this name? Yeah, nice name, of course, but looks like to me an Iranian. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your message, Bahel. Very interesting. Any comments, Reza, about your name?
Yes, thanks for asking, Bahel. You're right, I do have a strange name, Reza, R-E-Z-A, Reza. My name is a name which is very common in Iran. You're right, in Iran, in Persia. In fact, it's one of the most common names there is in that country. It's like being Pepe in Spanish. But actually, I'm not Iranian. My father was born in India. So I have relatives in India and Pakistan, which used to be the same country. That's a complicated story. So there are also Rezas in that kind of area, sort of Iran, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Iraq, that kind of part of the world. You can find some Rezas. What about you, Bahel? Where are you from?
Yeah, let us know. And regarding your question, we did speak about body language in quite some detail, so we won't repeat what we said back in episode 162. But hell, if you'd like to listen to that, just go to inglespodcast.com/162. AIRC182. But you're right, the body language is very, very important. I consider it a very important part of communication, but it's very cultural specific. So body language that we'd use in the UK, for example, would be completely different to body language used in Iran or Pakistan or Japan or India or China or wherever. So, go back and listen to that. And if you have any comments on what we said, we'd really be interested to hear from you again. Thanks for your message.
You made one little mistake of grammar, but I can't remember what he said now. Instead of how...
He said how we can use body language.
How we can.
Yeah.
But of course, if it's a question, Bahel, you've got to reverse the order and say, how can we? So put can before we. Mm-hmm. Apart from that, your message was fantastic. Really well done.
Next, we have an email from Vicente from Alicante, and I'll read it for you. He says, hello, everybody around the world. I am Vicente from Alicante, Spain.
Alicante, not Valencia? I thought Vicente had to be Valencia, not Alicante, not Castellón. Valencia, sorry.
We've got many Vicentes from Valencia. He continues, I wish I had known about this different funny way to learn English decades before. I would say decades ago. A decade is 10 years, so decades ago. My comprehension is going to improve a lot. And listening to the messages of our friends from Paraguay, Mexico, Peru, we can understand that problems in our fluency with the British language are the same for everyone. You were from you were. I would say, Vicente, wherever you're from, or regardless of where you're from. So the same problems, the same challenges, wherever you're from in the world. I want to ask your opinion, he continues, about the current situation in Catalonia. And if you find there are circumstances, coincidences, similarities in the question of independence in Scotland or Quebec, Canada. Regards from the Mediterranean to everyone. My special thanks to Craig and Reza.
To Crazy Reza.
Special thanks to Crazy Reza. I've become a fan of these podcasts. Love them. A new alcoholic. Well, welcome, Vicente, to the alcoholic club. I'm really pleased.
Yes, when we get a new alcoholic, we say, have a drink, celebrate. Now you're an alcoholic.
Regarding your question, Vicente, yes, I do have an opinion on Catalonia, but I would rather not share it on this podcast for two reasons. First of all, this is not a podcast about politics. We are here to help you improve your English, not to discuss politics. And also, I'm not Spanish, so I don't know how much right I've got to comment on the situation. And I'd prefer to be diplomatic and say nothing. Reza.
The same here. As we say in English, we're not going to go there. We're not going to go there. That means we're not going to get involved in that discussion because we don't want to offend anyone. By the way, thanks to all our Spanish listeners and particularly our listeners in Catalonia. Whatever happens, I'm sure you'll still keep listening to our podcast. There's no reason to stop, whatever happens.
Well, hey, if they're listening in Peru and Mexico and Argentina, so yeah, let's just hope everybody stays safe and that this all ends peacefully. DIY and home improvement. Reza, shall we begin with looking at some tools? Tools? Herramientas?
Okay, I feel a bit hypocritical doing this episode because I really don't know what I'm talking about. I'm terrible at DIY. I admit it right from the start.
Me too.
But it's an important topic and we should talk about it. The first word I wanted to mention was hammer. Now, hammer, like many of the words we'll be talking about now, it can be a noun, a hammer, or a verb. To hammer, martillar, and a hammer, martillo, is a very important tool, herramienta, for people doing DIY.
And a collocation with hammer, of course, what do you hammer? Well, often you hammer a nail, un clavo. So to hammer a nail into wood, Nail. And that's also the same on your finger. You have fingernails. Same word.
Something similar to a nail, but not quite the same, is a screw. It's similar to a nail, but instead of just going down, you have to turn it around and down, or to take it out, around and up. And to do that, you will need a screwdriver, destornillador for the screw, el tornillo.
And these days, instead of screws, some things, especially if you buy your furniture from IKEA, have Allen keys, Allen, llave Allen. So maybe your furniture, you need to put it together or assemble your furniture using Allen keys.
You'll need to know about nuts and bolts for DIY, tuercas y tornillos. So when you have a tornillo which goes with a tuerca, then instead of a screw, we call it a bolt, but it's similar. So it's also a very metaphorical expression. For example, Craig could say to you, I can show you all the nuts and bolts of podcasting. The nuts and bolts. In other words, how it all fits together, how you put the tuercas and tornillos together.
Los alimentos básicos y principios de podcasting. Sí. How do you say alicate or pinzas in English?
Pliers. Pliers. A very important tool. As is llave inglesa. Now, how do you say llave inglesa?
Well, it's not English key, is it?
No, it's not.
The llave inglesa or llave de tuercas is a spanner in British English, but our American cousins might say wrench or monkey wrench. That's WRENCH. So wrench or spanner.
Why in Spanish you call it llave inglesa? We've no idea. I never thought of it as especially English, but who knows?
Tape measure, very important to measure your wood before you cut it, for example. Cinta métrica, tape measure.
Another important piece of equipment is a drill. To drill can be the verb taladro or taladrar, to make holes.
And you need the different sizes at the end of your drill so that the hole is the correct size. So you need drill bits, B-I-T, como trozo. So bits, drill bits are brocas, the things that you put in the end of the drill that have different sizes.
You might need a ladder for DIY, Ladder. That's an escalera, but the type of escalera that you can move around with you, not a fixed one. Fixed would be stairs. Ladder is something that you can transport.
And also another word is steps, which they're generally smaller than ladders, aren't they? Like if you live in a flat, you might have a small set of steps that you can fold and keep in the cupboard. So that's not a ladder, but a smaller way of stepping up to fix things that are high. Another word, to saw, S-A-W. Of course, saw is the past of the verb to see, but it's also cerrar, and the noun is the same. A saw is cierra.
So don't confuse the verb to saw with the verb to see.
So you could say, I saw someone sawing a piece of wood with a saw. And his hand was sore, S-O-R-E.
A spirit level is a nivel. We mean the thing for measuring that things are flat, llano, spirit level. And all these small tools, the little ones, not the ladder, but the little ones, you might keep them all in your toolbox, caja de herramientas.
And if you use software programs like Photoshop, for example, you'll notice that in English, you'd see the icon toolbox, which is where you can use your different brushes and your different software tools to improve photographs or images.
So that's some very useful vocabulary. Now, what about some collocations or some expressions when we combine words? Can you think of anything useful, Craig, for our listeners?
Well, there's something that people often do around the house or the flat, and that's to change a light bulb. That's bombilla. Change a light bulb. For example, how many psychiatrists does it take to change a light bulb?
I don't know. How many?
Does the light bulb really need to change?
Good question. Good question.
Or how many Irishmen does it take?
How many?
3.
Oh, I think I've heard this one. Is it 2 to hold the room and 1 to turn... No, 1 to hold the light bulb and 2 to turn the room around? Isn't that it?
Turn the ladder.
Turn the ladder, yeah. And how many pessimists do you need to change a light bulb?
Don't know.
The answer is it doesn't matter because we're all going to die anyway.
Oh, how depressing. So you can change a light bulb, also change a plug, enchufe. So if you change a plug on your computer, you change your enchufe.
Craig, have you ever had to fit a cooker?
No, but we've had a cooker fitted, which is the causative. So we didn't do it. We had it done by somebody. So we paid somebody to fit the kitchen and fit the cooker.
So very often you pay people to fix or mend or repair things. That's arreglar. Could be a computer, a car, an engine, a leaking toilet, with batter goteando, etc.
So to leak is gotear, yeah?
Gotear.
Chorrear. And we have also had air conditioning installed. So we didn't do it, but we had a friend of ours install air conditioning in the flat. Also, you can tighten a screw. To tighten, the verb is apretar. So apretar un tornillo, to tighten a screw. Or this screw needs tightening, you could say.
Something which I'm not very good at because I haven't really done it is to decorate, redecorate, refurbish, remodel, or renovate, or do up a flat. Reformar.
All of those words mean reformar, right?
Yeah.
But I think the most common is probably to do up a flat, which could mean to paint. It could mean to put a new bathroom or a new kitchen in. So I'm having my flat done up. That would be, could be anything. Could be remodeling. It could be paying a builder to break down walls or just painting it to do it up.
Another home improvement is to put up shelves. That's estanterías. You can put up shelves. If you've got a problem with a leaky tap, well, you could repair it. You could repair a leaky. Do you remember? That was goteando, a leaky tap. But Americans wouldn't call it tap. What would they call it?
In American English, tap is faucet, F-A-U-C-E-T. Another thing you could do to your house or flat is to put new wires or cables into it to make the electrical system better. That's to rewire. The verb to rewire. Rewire the house or rewire the flat. Renovar la instalación eléctrica.
The word tile, which is a very important word in this part of the world, the Comunidad Valenciana, is azulejo. And it can also be a verb. To tile means to put up tiles. So you can tile a shower, tile a bathroom, and in Valencia, tile just about anything, actually. Because near here in Castellón, they're world famous for their tiles, in fact.
That's right. We decided not to retile our bathroom. We just painted it with waterproof white paint. So you don't have to tile your bathroom these days. You could just use good quality paint that doesn't let the water go through to the plaster. If you have a problem with your drain or your toilet, remember the verb to unblock, desbloquear. So drain is desagüe. If you have a problem with the water not going out of your drain or toilet, you need to unblock it.
Now, I'm sure most of our listeners have been to IKEA or a similar store. Notice IKEA, not IKEA, by the way, in English, IKEA. And they have bought a flat pack. What's that, Craig?
That's the way you have to buy furniture now that's not assembled. So you take it home, it's in a very flat box or flat package. And when you get home, you have the wonderful activity of looking at the instructions and putting the furniture together. So you screw in the screws, you put the nuts and bolts in place. And if you're very good, you end up with, and at the end of it, you have a cabinet or a cupboard or a table or whatever you've bought.
So Craig's talking about self-assembly. You have to do it yourself. So you might have to measure things, measure. You can measure the size, tamaño, length, that's the cuánto de largo, width, de ancho, height, de alto. You can measure the flatness of something. Flat is llano. The straightness, straight is recto, and all those things. You can measure those things.
And those words that Reza mentioned, if you're studying for the FCE CAE exam, these words very often appear in the use of English section because they test that you know the difference between long, the adjective, and length, the noun, wide, the adjective, and width, el ancho. So make sure you study those words because the spellings are a bit tricky and they're very often tested in exams, length, width, height, etc.
Craig, a plank is something I identify a lot with DIY. What's a plank?
A plank is a long, thin piece of wood. So you'd use planks to build a fence, for example, or when you paint, maybe you put a plank of wood between two ladders and then you stand on it. And there's an expression in English, if somebody is not particularly clever, if they're a bit slow, you could say, that person, he's as thick as a plank of wood.
I see. Yeah, that's a good expression. There are plenty of expressions from DIY that are metaphorical, as Craig said. A spanner in the works is another. Remember we said spanner was llave inglesa? And in the works is, the works means the working of the machinery.
The engine,
The engine. So a spanner in the works, something that ruins or disrupts everything else. Let me give you an example sentence. All my holiday plans were ruined by a French air traffic control strike. Oh, what a spanner in the works. It's ruined everything.
Another expression connected to DIY is a good workman never blames his tools. So if you do something badly, you don't say, that was because the tools were not usable. Or, I made a mistake with the computer because I didn't have the right software. Or, I made that mistake because I didn't No, you're to blame, not the tools you use. So a good workman never blames his tools.
If someone is good with his or her hands, in Spanish you say manitas. You just have a word for it. But in English, you got to use the expression. He's good with his hands.
I didn't know that. Just one word, manitas.
One word. Manitas.
Okay. So you say el manitas? Or
Él es manitas. As an adjective. Él es manitas.
Okay. So he's good with his hands.
Yep. Manitas.
Reza, do you enjoy DIY?
To be honest, not really, Craig. Or should I say, in theory, no, but sometimes I've had to do DIY. And once I got started, I quite enjoyed it for a short period of time. It's not something I would like to do frequently, but from time to time, it's okay.
So you got a sense of satisfaction when you did something well?
Yeah, whenever it works. But the sense of dissatisfaction when, for example, it happened to me, I was assembling from a flat pack some shelves in my flat, having carried them up 4 flights of stairs, 4 stories, 4 pisos, only to find that there was a missing screw. And I had to take them apart, the opposite of put them together, and bring them back to the shop. Now, that was not at all satisfying, as you can imagine.
Not a nice experience. I sympathize.
I find that very frustrating.
No, I'm not very good either. When I was younger, my dad used to do a lot of DIY when I was growing up, and he was quite good at it. But I think he did it because he didn't have the money to pay somebody, so he did a lot around the house. And when I helped him, if I did something badly, he'd shout at me. So he really destroyed my confidence when I was very young, and I grew up thinking I couldn't really use my hands well or do DIY well. So I haven't had the confidence to do DIY projects. So I only do things around the house when it's absolutely necessary. But I used to work as a painter. I painted houses in the past and done basic things, but I would not attempt to rewire a house or fit a toilet or a cooker or something big. No way. Couldn't do it.
Craig, I have a toolbox at home. I'm sure you do as well. Which tools should any house or flat not be without? What are the absolutely essential tools in that box?
Well, I would say basically what I have in my toolbox, which are the tools we mentioned at the beginning. Of course, there are many, many different tools, but I'd say the basic ones, you need a hammer, you need a drill, a screwdriver, probably a tape measure and a spanner. and some pliers, obviously a ladder or steps, so you need to be able to get up high in the house. Have I missed anything? Did anything in that list that you would say is
Did you
necessary?
Did you mention pliers?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Alicates. Yeah, pliers.
I think that's, and a saw?
No, I didn't, because to saw wood, I don't know. Do you saw wood? Maybe a small saw. Yeah, one of those ones that fold up like a big penknife. Yeah, maybe one of those will be useful.
Maybe a thing we haven't mentioned, we can mention now. A cutter. Cutter. It's the same word in Spanish, isn't it? A cutter.
But the pronunciation's different. A
Yeah.
Spanish person would say cutter, but the U sound is a cutter, to cut something.
There's a more old-fashioned name for that, a Stanley knife. Do you remember people used to say that?
Yeah, because that was the make of the knife. Yeah, my dad had a couple of Stanley knives. Yeah.
Knife is a cutter. And we forgot to mention possibly scissors. That should maybe be in our toolbox. SCISSORS, tijeras, scissors.
Yeah. Maybe industrial scissors, the really heavy ones that cut quite thick material.
Craig, which DIY project are you most proud of?
I think it has to be many years ago in my house where I grew up. There was a desk, and it was one of those old-fashioned desks that the top would fold down, and inside there were these drawers and very small compartments and places to put envelopes and stationery. And I really liked this desk, so I decided to restore it. So I took some sandpaper, papel de lijar, and I sanded down the desk. I took all the drawers out. I spent hours and hours and hours restoring this desk. And when I finished sanding off the old varnish, then I painted it with new varnish and some wood stain. And I was really, really pleased with it. I was really happy with the result. And it was a pleasure to use that desk for a few years before I moved to Spain.
Have you had any disasters?
Not that I can think of, because of the trauma of not having confidence in my own abilities. I've never really tried any big projects. So I've never had any big disasters because I haven't been adventurous enough. Have you?
No, for the exactly same reasons. If it sounds very difficult, I just don't attempt it.
There was a disaster that's kind of connected to this. When I was working as a forklift truck driver, a forklift is carretilla elevadora, I had an automatic door in this factory where I worked. It was a factory for vegetarian food. And when I pressed a button, the door went up. And when I pressed it again, the door came down. So I was going in thinking that the forks were down, but they were up high. So the forks went into the sliding door and completely took the door down.
Oh dear.
With this crash and this incredibly loud noise. And my boss was standing on the other side of the door looking and watching me. That was possibly the most disastrous thing that's ever happened to me, but it's not really DIY. It's more like an accident at work.
Did you get sacked for that incident?
No, strangely, I didn't. He wasn't happy. He shouted and cursed, and he was really, really angry, and it cost a lot of money to repair. But I didn't lose my job, thankfully. So you've been speaking for many years about...
It hasn't been years. Yeah.
many years about doing up your flat. Tell us about that. You haven't managed to do it yet.
I still haven't got round to doing it.
What do you think is stopping you? Because you don't want to do it yourself?
It's partly that, and also, this is going to sound terrible, but I blame my neighbours partly, because some of my neighbours are so lazy and so shabby, they don't seem to care about the appearance of our block of flats, and it's very deteriorated. And I think, well, why spend the time and effort in doing up my flat? So I'm thinking about just selling it, because I'm not sure it's worth, no sé si vale la pena, I'm not sure it's worth doing up, to be honest.
That could be a very sensible decision, because it is expensive to do up a flat and redecorate it. So maybe you'd be investing money and you wouldn't necessarily get that money back if you eventually sold it in the future.
I have a leak occasionally when it rains very heavily, and it's not my fault.
So the rain leaks into the flat. The water comes through.
It comes through. It leaks in from the outside. So it's the fault of the exterior facade, and it's affecting me. And everybody agrees that it's the responsibility of the whole block of flats to fix it. But just they say they haven't got the money to do it, and they might do it one of these days, and they might not.
Okay, Reza, but you're not sitting there with an umbrella watching television, surely. It's not that bad when it rains.
It hasn't got to that yet, but it might someday if they don't fix it. So while they don't do anything, I think, well, why should I bother to do anything on my end if they don't do it on their end?
I absolutely, totally agree. So, listeners, we will keep you posted and let you know what happens with Reza's flat and if he does it up eventually. And now it's your turn to practice your English. Are you good with your hands? Do you have a funny or disastrous DIY story to tell us? We'd love to hear from you. So you can send us a message on SpeakPipe. That's at SpeakPipe, speakpipe.com/Ingles podcast. Send us a message and tell us what you think. If you'd prefer to contact us by email, you can send one to Reza at belfastreza@gmail.com.
Or you could send one to Craig at inglespodcast.com.
And as we said last week, full transcriptions of our podcasts week by week are now available on Patreon. So Angelica Bello is translating one per week for you. And you can also get an MP3 and PDF course on how to pass a job interview that is exclusively available to Patreon subscribers. So the address for that is patreon.com/Ingles podcasts. We'd also like to thank Arminda, Alberto from Granada, and Angelica Bello, who have transcribed episodes for free. And the episodes transcribed are 131 to 142 and episodes 1 to 7. And thanks to Angelica's recent transcriptions, we've discovered a few errors that we've been making in the podcast. So thanks to Angelica. For example, in episode 177, when we spoke about how to write an email to a tech support team, I said capa duro. Of course, it's tapa dura in Spanish. And I think you made a slip as well, Reza, in one of the recent podcasts.
Yes, I'm afraid I may have invented a word which doesn't exist. Angelica found this out because she tried to look it up. I said decodifier for my television. Decodifier. And Angelica has discovered it doesn't exist. Decoder? Yes. But decodifier, no. There is a verb to decodify, so I've changed the verb into a noun, but it doesn't exist. I shouldn't have. It's decoder.
So in Spanish, that would be descodificador, okay? And one final thing that Angelica pointed out, I said the expression, I'm game to challenge, which we didn't really explain. If you're game to do something, that means que tienes ánimos a hacerlo. If you say, for example, do you want a game of tennis? You could say, yes, I'm up for it, which means I'm game for it. I'm willing. Mi ánimo. So are you game for listening to next week's podcasts? If you are, we're going to speak about sex next week.
Oh, I'm game for it.
So I'm game for sex. So we really look forward to welcoming you back next week on Aprender Inglés con Reza y Craig. Before we go, of course, we'd like to say a huge thank you to our lovely sponsors, who are Pedro, Manuel, Maite, Sara, Carlos, Tara Picato, Lorena, Rara, Mamin, Juan Leva Guerrera, Corey Finneran from the IVMV podcast, Mariel Reidamen, Jorge Jimenez, Raúl, Rafael, María, Manuel Tarazona, Agus, Nestor García Mañez from the podcast NestorGM.com, Luces Extrañas, Juan Carlos, Rafa, Beatriz Sánchez, José Luis, and Miren Full. Thank you very much for supporting our show. Until then, it's goodbye from Reza.
And bye-bye from Craig.
The music in this podcast is by Pitts. The track is called See You Later.